Hi everybody. We're going to be continuing our lesson with significant figures by moving on from the addition and subtraction, and we're going into multiplication and division. Now, the good news is, even if this still is a little bit confusing, this should seem easier than the addition and subtraction. So when we're looking at multiplication and division of significant figures, there is a rule that goes along with this, the same as we had with the addition and subtraction. What we're looking at here is the final answer should be rounded to the same number of significant figures as the measurement with the least number of significant figures. So in addition and subtraction, we were looking at the number of decimal places. Now we're looking at the number of significant figures. So now we are looking at the number of significant figures. As the least number of significant figures. The measurement with the least number of significant figures. So again, this should seem a little bit easier once we get into it here. Let's begin with multiplication. We're just going to look at that. So let's take, for example, the number 2.48, and we're going to multiply that by 6.3. When you plug that into the calculator, you get 15.624. So now we have to look at the total number of sig figs. When we look at 2.48, all the numbers are non-zeros, which means they're all significant. So this has 3 sig figs. 6.3. Again, all the numbers are non-zeros, so we know automatically they're all significant. So this has 2 sig figs. So the least number of sig figs is right here, and that would be 2. So our final answer is we're going to round at 2 sig figs. Well, here's 1 sig fig. Here's 2 sig figs, and we're always going to read from left to right. So when we get the final answer, we look right past this, and the number's a 6. So it's going to round the 5 up to 16. That would be our final answer here. That's all the significant figures we can have. Let's do another example here for multiplication. 0.048 times 32.97. When you plug that into the calculator, you get an answer of 1.58256. So now again, we have to decide how many significant figures our answer can have. When we look at the number to 0.048, the number on the left here, we find that this, again, only has 2 sig figs. This 0 here, this is one of your leading zeros. And leading zeros are not significant, so it only has 2 sig figs. Here at 32.97, we have 4 sig figs. Whoop. Sig figs, not fig sigs. Sig figs. So the smallest number of sig figs, or the least number of significant figures, I should say, is right here at 2 again. So we're going to round 1, 2. And we're going to look right after it. And we have an 8. So because it's an 8, we know that this is going to round up to 1.6 as our final answer. So that's multiplication. Now I am going to just make note of this because of how I write things in class and how you'll see things written in chemistry. You could have written this same problem as 2.48 times 6.3. You'll see a lot of times this little dot symbol used as a multiplication symbol. Just be very careful when you're using it. I'm okay if you used a dot or if you use the normal multiplication symbol, just make sure if you are going to use that dot there, that you don't confuse it with a decimal place. Write it a little higher up, like in the middle of the problem, so you don't get it confused there. So let's go on down here. Let's go on down to division now. We're going to look at some division. So the first example we're going to look at with division is 12.2. Now you could write 12.2 divided by, we're going to divide it by 1.7. You could write it like this, but to get in a habit, we aren't going to write it like this. We don't use that division symbol in chem. You're going to start to write this as 12.2 divided by 1.7. We're just going to get in a habit of that now. When you plug this into the calculator, you get an answer of 7.1764705882. That's a lot of numbers, and that's way too specific. That's way too precise to have as an answer. So we have to figure out the number of sig figs, the least number of sig figs. Well, down here at 1.7, they're all non-zeros, so it's easy. This is 2 sig figs, and up here at 12.2, we have 3 sig figs. So 1.7 has the least number of sig figs at 2, which means we're going to round at 2 decimal places, or 2 significant figures, 2 significant figures, not decimal places. And because there's a 7 after the 1, we know it's going to round up, and the final answer is going to be 7.2. And there's it is for division. Division has the same rule as multiplication. It's a lot easier.